people. We've been in business for about 15 years. And we have more than 4,000 customers worldwide, both in the clinical and the research realm. So hopefully what I'll be able to show you today is why so many people have started using FCS Express for their flow cytometry. Okay, so what is FCS Express? Well, it's a software package that runs on Windows. It can also run on a Mac if you're running a virtual Windows environment, like VMware or Parallels. It reads FCS files from any flow cytometer, both version FCS2 and FCS3 files. And as you've probably noticed, it looks and feels like Microsoft Office PowerPoint. So this whole applications window is organized with a ribbon at the top where functions are grouped into logical groups under different tabs. So we'll come back to that once we start doing our analysis together. But the other thing I want to point out about FCS Express is not only is it a sophisticated analysis software package, but it's also a sophisticated reporting software package. And so let me just show you a couple of example layouts so you'll see what I mean by that. So this is an example of a layout that was saved unlinked to any data files. So it's sort of like saving a template. So I'm just going to quickly load in some data files here so you can see what this layout's all about. So notice how as soon as I loaded my data files in, all of these 2D plots and this bar plot has automatically populated with my data. So that's what I mean when I say not only is it a sophisticated analysis software package, but it also has significant reporting capability built into the software. So you have this bar plot that is basically summarizing the results of the experiment. And so in the case of this experiment, this is a T-cell clonotyping experiment showing the clonal diversity of your T cells. Now, if you want to, after making this bar plot, go back and adjust something about your analysis, like perhaps changing the gate onto this T-cell DIM population, you can see that we're looking at a much more clonal population where this clone predominates. And so what this shows you is that you don't have to waste a lot of time migrating back and forth between your analysis software package and whatever spreadsheet and graphing software package you might be using. So you can just change your gates, do whatever you want, and you have your summary statistics here in the bar plot automatically updating in real time. And you can even reuse this layout for experiments in the future, so there's no having to recreate the wheel in FCS Express. Another nice example along those lines is this CD64 titration layout. So this is a layout that was designed to analyze the results of an antibody titration experiment. So in this case it's CD64, which binds monocytes, this gate here that I've highlighted. Now watch this regression curve in red update in real time as I move my monocytes gate. Do you see how it's moving? This is basically a regression curve that's based on the Michaelis-Menten binding kinetics equation, and we've even programmed this layout to extract the 90% of Vmax, which is this green dot, and that's what we've defined as the amount of antibody we want to use. And you'll see that that value updates as we move our gate. So you could actually save this layout and use it for any titration you might want to do in the future, and this really saves you a lot of time. And the last layout I want to show you before we really get started in earnest is this high content heat maps data. So some of you out there might be doing high content flow, and if so, you probably are generating a lot more data per week than you really have time to analyze. So what we've done is we've created these high content heat maps, which work with a lot of major high content flow cytometry platforms out there today. And you have different coloring schemes. So this one is green to blue, where low GFP well values are green and high is blue. This is that same data, but it's graphed in a threshold fashion where wells above an arbitrary threshold value are colored red. And so this really allows you to zoom in on that 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 100,000 well that is what you're looking for instance, if you're doing a drug screen or something like that. And the other thing that's really neat about this is, in addition to the normal gates that you see on these dot plots, we also have well gates. So if I just show you this well gate here, this experimental well gate is defined on this well here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's outlined in purple here. Now, if I want to change the swell gate, keep your eye on this histogram right here, this blue histogram. If I change the swell gate to be all these multiple wells, you can see that that histogram updated in real time. And I can even select non-contiguous regions, okay? So this gives you a lot of flexibility and allows you to find the data you're looking for. So, now that you've seen a little bit about what FCS Express can do, you might think that those layouts are very complicated and maybe they're a little bit intimidating, but I just want to assure you that FCS Express is very, very easy to use, and that's what we're going to show you today. Before we get started, I just wanted to reiterate that please, you should feel free to enter in your questions into the question and answer box that's right here on the right, where it says enter a question in for staff, and either our staff members who are on the line or I will get back to you during the course of the webinar, or if it's a more in-depth question, we'll send you an email follow-up. So at this point, I just want to pause. Does anybody have a question about any of the layouts that I have shown so far? No? Okay, well, feel free to enter those in if a question does come up. Okay, so like I said, this is FCS Express. It looks a lot like Microsoft Office PowerPoint. And just like PowerPoint, this is a text box, which is an object. So since it's an object, you can easily manipulate it inside the software. I'm resizing it, I'm moving it around, I can add text. And so anything that you would want to print in FCS Express, such as a 2D plot or a histogram or a statistics window, those are all objects that you can move around at will, okay? And right now we're on the Home tab, which has the collection of frequently used functions up here on the ribbon. So to start our new analysis, let's insert a new page. So I'm just going to come up to New Page here. And you can see that we have all these different kinds of predefined templates, just like you have predefined slide templates in PowerPoint. So if you like to work with arrays of plots, 3x2, or plots with statistic windows below them, you can select these predefined templates. Or if you prefer, you can just select a blank page. And that's what we're going to do today because it's the most simple way to start. I'm going to click down here on my navigation toolbar. You can see this little blank page tab. So no matter where you are on the ribbon, you can always get to a new page just by clicking on that. Okay? And here we are with our new page. So the first thing you probably want to do is insert a plot. So if you come up to the Insert tab on the ribbon, you'll see we have all these different kinds of plots available. So let's actually start out by inserting a color dot plot. And I'm just going to click once on my layout. And I'm going to select the file that I want to work with today. And let's just change these parameters to something a little bit more interesting for us. Okay, so this is our 2D color dot plot. You can also insert 1D plots, so I'm going to insert a histogram here. So now I'm actually going to just draw the size right off the bat that I want. Okay, and you can resize either of these however you want to because, like I said, they're objects, just like the text box that was on the welcome screen. And now I'm going to show you another way to insert plots, and that is if you come up to your data list, which is on the Data tab, and click on Data List, you'll see that FCS Express has automatically put in all the files from the folder that we pulled our first file from. So I'm actually going to remove most of these because we really don't need to work with a whole bunch of files today. Okay, so another way to look at files, to look at plots of your files, is to actually do drag and drop from the data list. So I'm just going to take this, click on it, and just drag and drop it onto the layout. And now I'm prompted what kind of plot type would I like to insert. Well, let's actually insert a color dot plot and a density plot and see how that looks, okay? So you can see you can insert both at the same time. And, once again, I'm going to just change these parameters to something a little bit more interesting. And you even have the choice of, just like in PowerPoint, you can align objects to make your data look neat. So I'm just multiply selecting, and I'm going to hit Align. So now you can see that these two plots are aligned. Another thing with drag and dropping is you can create overlays. So if I want to make a histogram overlay, I'm just going to drag my file name onto this and select Add File as an overlay. And so you can see that now we have a histogram overlay. If you want to change the format of your plots, it's very easy to do so in FCS Express. You just need to right-click on any plot, and then you get this pop-up menu here. And if I come down here, you'll see that we also have stacked histograms, okay? Maybe I want to retitle this into something a little bit more descriptive, so let's call this my histogram overlay. And you have a very interactive text editor here where you can change the font size, you can even change the color. So now you can see the titles coming through. Maybe I want to get rid of this background. And you can do basically anything you want here. So if you want to make your x-axis labels invisible, you can do that. If I want to change the font size to be a little bit bigger, I can do that as well, okay? And you can also reformat plot types once you've already inserted them. So if I want to instead change this to a contour plot, it's very easy to do so, okay? And I just want to point out, in addition to having a strong resemblance to Microsoft Office PowerPoint, your analysis, if you save this in PowerPoint right now, it is going to look exactly as you've made it. So let's just do a quick save right now so you'll see what I mean. I'm going to save this as a PowerPoint. I'm going to send it to my desktop and just call this save. And let's just do the current page. So this is popped up on my other screen, so just give me a minute so I can drag this over to show you. So as you can see, this was a 100% faithful transition. So all of my objects look as they did in my analysis, and not only that, I can move them around because they've retained their identity as individual objects, and I can even resize them as I wish because they were transferred over with very high resolution. And if some of you like to actually make, if you like to make posters as you go along just by using the clipboard, copy-paste, it's very easy to do that as well. And you can even pull in data from other layouts. So if I just hit a copy here, if I just hit Control-C on my keyboard, I can come over to my PowerPoint and just paste that in. So this makes it very easy to create posters and presentations on the fly, even if you're pulling in data from different layouts. Okay? So hopefully you'll see that it's very easy to use and it's a very easy transition. Okay, so right now what I'm going to do is actually get rid of some of these plots that we don't need for our analysis today. So if you come up to the Undo button, which is on our Quick Access toolbar, I'm just going to start clicking Undo to get rid of some of these changes, okay? And notice how many times I'm clicking it. So basically, the Undo button is virtually unlimited in FCS Express. You can also hit Control-Z on the keyboard if you prefer. So our Undo really works, and so don't be afraid to do whatever you need to do in your layout. You can always get back to where you were without any fear, okay? So now we know how to insert plots. Let's move on to how do we insert gates into our plots. So if I come up to the Gating tab on the toolbar, I'm going to choose to insert a certain kind of gates. So you'll see we have all these different gates here, all the shapes you expect. And before I get into gates, are there any questions about inserting plots that I could address? Any confusion I could clear up? No? Okay, well if there are, just again, please feel free to enter that in to the questions and answers. So now I'm going to insert a polygon gate. So the way I'm going to do that is just select polygon, and I'm going to click around on my population. I'm clicking once on each vertex, and then clicking on the original one to close it up. And here I can give it a name, so let's call this our lymph gate. I could select my color. I'm just going to leave this as red. Okay, and so now we have our lymph gate, and if for some reason we need to make some adjustments, we can adjust individual vertices by just dragging them, or I can resize the whole gate at once by clicking on these outer resizing handles. And if you want to start drilling down on this population, you can also drag and drop this gate out. So just like we dragged and dropped files from the data list, you can also drag and drop gates. And that's something that's pretty new in version 4. We have this enhanced drag and drop functionality, which I really think streamlines your analysis and makes it a more pleasant experience. So let's change these parameters here. Okay, and so now I'm going to insert another kind of gate. So this time let's insert a freeform gate. So I'm going to click freeform. And the way the freeform gate works is it's basically like drawing with a pen or pencil tool in Microsoft Office Paint or in Adobe Photoshop. Okay, and so let's call this our freeform gate. Maybe I'd like to change this color to a more subdued green. Okay, and let's also insert another kind of gate. So this is a rectangle gate, and I'm going to put it over here. Let's call this a rectangle gate, and let's give this another color. Okay, so one thing you might have noted in this color dot plot is that the events are colored heterogeneously inside the boundaries of each gate. And the reason for that is because our gating hierarchy has been set up so that all these gates are at the same level. So if instead you want to make the freeform gate a child of the LIMS gate, all you have to do is come up to this Insert tab, and this is the Gate View button, which I just inserted. And on this Gate View, all you need to do is just click on the gate you want, and I'm just going to drag it into my LIMS gate. So now if you look inside the boundaries of a freeform gate, all of those events are colored green. And that signifies that the freeform gate is now dependent on the LIMS gate. Now I'm just going to click and undo to show you that you can actually drag both at the same time. So I'm doing a multiple select using my control on my keyboard, and now I'm dragging them in. And now you can see that both of those gates are children of the LIMS gate. Okay? Now this gate view is an interactive legend of your gates, so you can make other changes to your gates as well. So maybe I want to rename this gate. I'm just going to click F2, standard rename command in Microsoft Windows, and call this my FCS positive gate. Okay? Maybe I have even changed my mind. I don't want this FCS positive gate to be a rectangle anymore. Well, it's very easy to change the shape of the gate without having to redo your whole gating logic here. I'm going to click on ellipse and just draw the ellipse around my population. And instead of creating a new gate, I'm going to replace my FCS gate. Okay? So you can see that the FCS gate has now been redefined as an ellipse, and it still retained its place in the hierarchy as a child of the LIMS gate. So in FCS Express, you don't need to spend a lot of time deleting and redefining and renaming gates and all the children of those gates just because you've made a change to your gating logic. So it's very fluid and very pleasant to work with, I think. Are there any questions about that? Okay. Great. So that is basically how you create regular gates. From the gate view, you can also create combination gates simply by right-clicking and hitting combination gate. And let's call this my combo gate. And I'm going to give this a real standout pink color here. Now, if I want to create a combination gate, this is where you would use Boolean operators. So for instance, if I want to define a gate that is containing all of the events that don't fall in either of these two gates, I can use the Boolean operator not. So notice the autofill. And now I just start typing the name of one of my gates. Again, notice the autofill because FCS Express is aware of all of the gates in your layout. So I'm going to put not FCS or freeform and hit OK. So now if I actually drag this gate, so this is a child of the LIMS gate, and let me just maximize this so you can see, all of the events that didn't fall in either of these two gates are now defined as that bright pink My Combo gate. Okay? And it's even more clear to see if I actually apply the My Combo gate to this plot, and I can do that again from the gate view simply by dragging and dropping that gate onto the plot, and now you can see that this plot is only showing the My Combo gate events. Okay? I'm just going to click undo. So that is one way to apply gates, by dragging gates from the gate view. Another way to apply gates is actually dragging a gate from a plot to another plot. So let me show you an example of what I mean. Perhaps I want to gate this histogram below here on the FTSE gate. So I'm just going to drag my FTSE gate into the histogram, and you can see that instantaneously this histogram has updated to be gated on the FTSE gate. If you come up here and notice the current gate toolbar up in the upper left corner here, you can see that this histogram is showing up as being gated on FTSE. If I want to change that, I can actually put this under whatever gate I want. So maybe I want to gate the histogram on my combo gate. You can see it updated. Okay? I can even multiple select plots and use this current gate toolbar to gate it on whatever I want to. So now these are both gated on freeform, okay? But I'm actually going to just gate them both on limps. And for those of you who like to know at a glance what each plot is gated on, it's very easy to format your plots to look that way. So I'm just going to add the current gate to the title of my plot. So you can see that limps showed up there. And I just want to add that that's something that is easy to change in your preferences so that every plot you create will have that in your title, okay? So if that's how you're used to working, it's very easy to do that in FCS Express. Are there any questions about how to apply gates or anything about gating in FCS Express at this point? If so, just go ahead and enter that into the questions and answer box, please. Okay, so now you've seen a little bit about gating. Typically, you might also be using quadrants, and that's also located up here on the gating tab. But what I'm going to do, which I think is a little bit easier, is I'm actually just going to right-click on my plot and add the quadrants that way. Okay? And if I want to format these quads so that rather than having these standard quads here, I maybe would want to do a percentile quad or perhaps a floating quad. You'll see that the floating quad basically, let me just move this gate a little bit, the floating quad allows you to change the vertices individually, both the inner, the central, and the outer vertices, so you can define your quadrant to best fit your population, okay? And a really neat thing you can do with these quadrants is you can actually link quadrants to gates. So if perhaps I'd like to link this quadrant to a gate, I can just hit convert quad to gate, and if I want to convert the upper left quadrant to a gate, I'm going to create a new gate, call it upper left gate, and let's give this a gold color. Okay, so now if I make this a child of my limps, if you take a look at this upper left quadrant, and let me just move this text box out of the way. Okay, maybe it's hard to see, but if I actually gate this plot on the upper left quadrant, you can see that as I move my quadrant, that the gate is updating. Okay, so that's a real handy thing to do. And now this upper left gate, which was created based on the quadrant, can be applied to any other plot, just like a normal gate. Okay? On histograms, you also have the option to create markers. And just like I showed you with the quadrant, you can also link these markers to gates by using the same procedure. Okay? So I'm not going to go through it, but it's basically an identical procedure. And so now at this point we have a pretty interesting layout. It's looking pretty good. What we might want to do right now is start looking at some statistics. So if you want to look at some statistics based on this marker, all you need to do is right-click on the plot and hit Statistics, and you have this default statistics window here. Now I'm going to right-click and get rid of some of these things that I don't need. Okay, so these statistics windows are customizable to some extent. I can even add in other things, like maybe I want to add in my marker number, maybe I want to add in my, my CV here, okay? And if you want to, you can even reorder things. So maybe I want my median to be a little bit over here. And just the same way that I created a marker statistics window, I can also create a gate statistics window. So I'm going to come up here to my 2D plot and hit gate statistics. Okay. So here you can also format this window, and for instance, maybe I don't want to look at all these different gates. I only want to look at some of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the gates that I don't want to show. So I'm selecting the upper left gate. Maybe I don't want to look at the My Combo gate. So now you can see that the gates to display in the statistics window are basically just the ones I want to look at, okay? And lastly, you can also make a quadrant statistics window using the same procedure. And I'm just going to drag that over here, okay? And maybe I'd like to add in some other statistics here as well, okay? So you can see that it's very easy in FCS Express to get statistics from your plots with just one click. Okay, so that's very nice, but the shortcoming of these windows is you can only look at statistics from one plot at a time. But in reality, you probably have a much more complex layout with multiple pages, or even in the case of the simple analysis, you might want to look at a summary of the statistics that are cherry-picked from each of your plots. Well, the way you do that in FCS Express is by working with text boxes and tokens. Okay, so let's insert a text box and you'll start to see what I mean. So this is just like inserting a text box in PowerPoint. I'm just going to write, this is my text box. And now let's start working with tokens. So perhaps we'd like to see in our text box how many lymph events we have. So let's type, my sample has. What I'm going to do now is, remember we have a lot of drag and drop functionality. I'm just going to drag this lymph gate into my text box. Whoops, I think I didn't quite select it. And now FCS Express is asking me from my lymph gate, what do I want to add? So let's put the number of events. So now it says my sample has, let's type out the sentence. Okay, so now if I click away from the text box, you'll see that that 2746 number looks like a regular piece of text. But if I click inside the text box, you'll see that it's highlighted in gray, okay? And so that means that it's a token. So it's a live updating piece of text on your layout. If I move my lymph gate up here, notice how the number of lymph events has changed, okay? I'm just going to undo that. So you might have noticed that these gate statistics that appear above your gate, they update in real time too as you adjust your gates, and that's because they're also tokens, which you can see if I click inside the gate text box, you'll see that they're highlighted in gray. And so tokens are really the key for creating the kinds of statistical presentations that you want to do in FCS Express, okay? So that's all well and good, but you probably want to organize your statistics in a more, in a more organized way. So I'm going to click on Table. I'm going to click inside the text box and just add a table. And let's put in a couple more columns. And now, since we're going to be pulling in statistics from different plots on our layout, let's call this table Selected Stats from My Layout. And this is a fully formatable table, so you can even merge cells, just like you can in Excel. You can come up here to your text editor and center a line, maybe make this bold. I'm going to make this a little bit of a bigger font and perhaps make it blue, okay? Maybe I want to highlight it with a nice pale green. Okay, so now you can see that you can really make this table look however you want it to look. And so at this point, we probably want to start filling in some statistics into our table. So it's very easy to do that. You can actually highlight this token that you've already created, and I'm going to copy this and just paste it into here. And by the way, you can also use keyboard shortcuts to do that. And let's title this %lymphs. So I've already shown you how you can create tokens by dragging gates to and from text boxes, okay? You can also drag markers. So let's actually drag this marker into my table. And I want to look at the median, so I'm going to select median. And let's call this MFI of marker 1. So these are two examples of statistical tokens, but you can also insert text tokens. And what do I mean by text tokens? Well, if I drag this whole plot into my table like this, you have the choice between a statistic token and a keyword token. So a keyword is basically a piece of text that's stored as metadata with your FCS files when you acquired them. So I'm going to select keyword token, And then if I click on the ellipsis, I have all these different keywords that were stored with my sample at the time of acquisition. So let's select this one, and that's basically my sample ID. Okay, so those are a couple of ways to insert tokens. We have a whole lot of other tokens in FCS Express. If I right-click and show you all the different kinds of tokens, you'll see that these are examples of different kinds we have. And I'm not going to go into the details of all the different kinds of tokens we have today, but we do have a nice statistics and text box tokens webinar coming up later this week. So I encourage you to stay tuned and signed up for that if you're interested in that. Okay, so this is how you would build a token from scratch, just by right-clicking. So these are all some interesting statistics, but you also have the ability to create custom statistics in FCS Express. So what do I mean by that? So let's actually reserve a cell in our table for custom statistics. Now I'm going to come up to my custom tokens. And before I start defining what a custom token is, does anybody have a question about what a regular token is? Because if so, just go ahead and enter that into the box and we'll get back to you. Okay, so I'm going to click on a little green plus and write my custom stat. And down here is where I'm going to start defining my custom statistics. So this works just like Excel. I'm actually going to just type in equals here, just like you would to define a formula in Excel, and start with a real simple example, 2 plus 2, okay? Now if I just drag and drop that custom stat, drag and drop that custom stat into my table, you'll see that FCS Express has calculated that as 4, okay? So it evaluates it as the formula. Now maybe I want to do something a little bit more interesting rather than 2 plus 2, and I want to actually put my FTSE positive number of events divided by 2. Okay, you'll see that the custom stat has automatically updated. And I can even change my gate, and because it's a token, that value went from 1,000 to 1,020. Okay, so all of these things are updating in real time, just like a regular token would. And you can even do something more sophisticated, use tokens within tokens, and maybe I wanted to look at the ratio between my FTSE positive and my freeform gate. So now I've just defined that ratio as FTSE positive divided by freeform, okay? And so now that ratio is 7. So you can even get a lot more fancy if you want to and use all sorts of functions in your custom statistic definitions. So of course, I'm not going to go through all of these, but the titration layout that I showed you earlier today was an example of using the Michaelis-Menten function that's built into FCS Express. So you can really make your analysis as complex or as simple as you want to in FCS Express, all using the same principles of building up and working with tokens. Okay? Great. So are there any questions about tokens before I go on? Now's a really good time for me to save my layout. So I'm just going to save this to my desktop and call this our webinar. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no questions, what I'd like to start talking about next is our batch processing section. So like I said, in FCS Express, you have the ability to do all sorts of analysis right inside the program, but some of you may wish to, for some reason or other, export your data to other software packages. Well, it's very easy to do that using our batch processing section. Okay, so if I click on batch and batch actions up here in my ribbon, okay, you'll see that basically I have the choice of adding all these different actions I want to do. So what is batch processing? Okay, batch processing is basically when you want to export your data to other programs and you want to run through those exports on a one-by-one basis with your samples. So if I start adding actions to my batch process action, for instance, I'm going to add print, click OK. Maybe we also want to do a PowerPoint export, so I'm going to click PowerPoint, and let's save this to our desktop. And we'll call this my PPT. Okay. Whoops. So let's actually combine these so it's just one big PowerPoint file. And maybe I also want to add in a PDF action. So we're going to save it at the highest quality, and let's just do the current page. Okay, and we're going to send this to our desktop, and let's call this our PDF. And what we're going to do is just add in the keyword to the end of our file name so that every PDF will be named differently according to the file we're talking about. Okay, so I'm going to add the sample ID here. Okay, and lastly, we probably want to add in an Excel export. Whoops. Okay, so let's call this my stats. Okay, and let's just double check that we're going to save these separately. Okay, great. So basically what batch processing is going to do is it's going to advance through all the iterations, i.e. since we have 4 samples, it's going to be 4 iterations, and for each iteration it's going to go through this queue of actions. So it's going to print the layout, we're going to have a PowerPoint slide for each iteration, we're going to have a PDF file for each iteration, and we're going to have a row of Excel stats for each iteration. Okay? Okay, so now all that's left to do is to actually define what kind of stats do we want to export to Excel. So since we went to all this trouble of making this nice text box for our Excel, our nice text box, which is a summary of all our statistics, I'm just going to drag this whole text box and just drop it into my Excel. So now you can see that all of the statistics that we defined here in our table are going to come through in the Excel. And maybe I want to delete some of these because this one is a duplicate. You can even reorder things, so it's very flexible, our batch processing actions. So I'm moving this keyword, I'm going to move this keyword token up to the top here because I think it should be basically the first export. So it's going to be the first column in my export, okay? And you can even drag in other things. So in addition to dragging and dropping plots and gates into your tables, you can even drag and drop some of these items from your default statistics windows, okay? So I'm going to pull in perhaps this one, FTSE number of events. Okay, and in this case I'm going to give this one a title. So this way this will show up as the column title in Excel. Okay, and let's give this one a title too because this is a real nice custom statistic we made. So let's call this our custom ratio. Okay, and I'm going to uncheck print because I'm actually not hooked up to a printer right now. But that's a real nice thing to point out, which is once you've lined up your queue of actions, you can always check or uncheck them as the case may be. It may not be that you want to export to PDF every time you want to look at your layout. That's no problem. That's why we have these checkboxes. Okay? So now if I come up to my Data tab, let's actually take a look at what some of our data looks like. So right now we've only looked at the first sample in our set. If I come up to change data on all objects, you can see that we can play through our samples. Okay? So you see the samples are changing. Maybe I'm going to need to redefine some of my gates. Okay? So it's going to be very easy to do that during our batch process. And the way we're going to do that is by coming up to the Batch tab, clicking on Options, and here we have the ability to click Pause Between Iterations. And so what that means is FCS Express is going to do the first sample, it's going to do all these actions for that sample, and then give us a pause and allow us to make whatever changes we want to make to our layout before proceeding on to the next sample. Okay, and I'm just going to restore the state of the layout so we're back to the baseline, back to the drawing board for each sample. Okay, so are there any questions about batch processing before I actually click on this lightning bolt and click Run and show you how this really works? No? Okay, so if there's no questions, what I'm going to do is just click on this lightning bolt Run and show you how easy it really is to get these batch exports in FCS Express. Okay, so actually my PowerPoints are already starting to show up on my other screen, and I'll drag those over and show you how they look. So right now we've done all these exports for our first sample, and now we've advanced to our second sample. So maybe I want to change this quadrant a little bit. Maybe I want to move this gate. I could even move the marker. Let's hit next. So now we're on the third sample in our layout, okay? And so you can even make more profound changes if you want to. Perhaps I want to retitle this plot for some reason. Let's add check sample. Maybe I need to make a note to myself to do that. Okay, so you'll see that that appeared there. And let's hit another continue. Okay, so now maybe for some reason I want to resize this freeform gate really big. Of course, that's kind of silly, but I'm just doing this to show you how you deal with changing with gates during batching. And now I'm going to hit continue. Okay, so let's start out with our PowerPoint export. So I'm going to drag that PowerPoint over to this screen. Okay, so now if you take a look, you'll see just like we did our quick save at the beginning of our webinar, we have our analysis looking in PowerPoint just like it looked inside of FCS Express. I can resize all of these as I wish, and they're still very high resolution, okay? And in addition, all of these items that were on the background of your page come through in the export as well. So it's nice that you can move them to the page proper if you want to include them in the slideshow presentation, or you can leave them on the background and just use them as notes for the presenter. And if I come down to one of those other samples, so this is the last sample where I adjusted that freeform gate to be huge. You can see that that came through in the export. This is where I retitled that first plot. So you can make whatever adjustments you want to make on a per sample basis using FCS Express's batch export function, okay? And if I quickly show you some of these PDFs that came through, let's just open one of these. So this is one of the PDFs, and you can see that it came through at very high resolution, okay? And I'm scrolling down, and of course those background images didn't come through because this is really just a printing program where things on the page proper come through, okay? And lastly, this is our Excel spreadsheet that we made. And since we had 4 samples, we had 4 iterations, and these were their sample ID. We didn't title that column, but if I do a quick reformat of the column width, you can see that the statistics for which we gave a title in our batch exports, those titles came through. So our custom ratio and FTSE. And this is a very simple example of an Excel export. But keep in mind that this can get as complicated as you want to. You can even export stats to different worksheets within the same workbook, and you can title those worksheets as you wish. Okay? So let's come back to our layout. Okay, and I'm just going to do a quick save. So now if I really wanted to actually save this layout as a template and use it for my future experiments, it would be very easy to do that. I'm just going to come up to Save Layout As, and this time I'm going to save it unlinked. So let's call this our webinar unlinked, and this is kind of like saving it, as a template. Okay, so now if I open up that unlinked layout, whoops. And let's get rid of all of these. Okay, so now if I load in the samples that I want to, perhaps I want to load in these next few. Okay, I'm going to load them in and just change, I'm going to select the first file and change data on all the plots. So now you can see that we didn't have to recreate the wheel, but this layout was already ready to go, and it's already ready to treat our next week's batch of experiments, okay? And I can go next and scroll through my samples and see how they look different, and all of these batch actions were lined up as well. So it's very easy. Once you put in the effort up front to make up your layout, you can easily use it in the future for similar types of experiments. Okay? Are there any questions about that? Okay, great. So, before we start wrapping things up, I just wanted to mention a few things that I didn't have time to go over today. So FCS Express has quite a few features that we actually didn't touch on today. And one of them is compensations. So many of you probably these days are acquiring your samples with compensation. And with FCS3 format files, that compensation is a keyword in your file that you can choose to apply or not. So of course we can read those compensations. We can also tweak those existing compensations. So simply just by right-clicking, coming down to compensation, you could tweak this compensation if you wanted to. We also have a very nice auto-compensation module where you can create new compensations anew using your single stained controls. Okay. For those of you who are actually doing acquisition with either FACS, or Acuri software, we have these wonderful importers that allow you to import your acquisition workspaces, which is a really great time saver because typically you spend a lot of time making your preliminary gates and plots during your acquisition only to find that you have to redo most of that work once you come into your analysis software. But in FCS Express, you can import those workspaces and you can actually work with those preliminary gates you made just like you work with normal gates in FCS Express. So you can use them as a starting point for your analysis. Okay? We also have parameter math, which is really handy for some of you folks who might be doing kinetics analysis and you need to define your own custom parameters such as FL3 divided by time. That's just an example. Those parameters can be as complex as you want, okay? But that makes that type of analysis a little more easy. And in addition, we have all these other 1D kinds of plots that I didn't have time to mention, such as multi-cycle for analyzing cell cycle data, and proliferation if some of you out there are doing cellular proliferation studies with CFSE or other tracking dyes. Okay? And also, this is something really exciting. We have these collaboration tools. So if you come up to the Applications button, come to Collaborate, you can publish your layout. And what that means is that if somebody out there, you want to share your layout with them, all they have to do is download the free FCS Express Reader. And that will allow them to open up your published layout, play with the gates, make adjustments, evaluate your analysis, and it's basically that reader is free. So it's a lot like Adobe PDF Reader where you can use that program to view PDFs that others have made. So we find that a lot of folks who are doing collaborations or doing teaching perhaps with graduate students or med students or even undergrads have found that publishing feature very useful. Okay? So those are some features that we hope you'll join us in another webinar to learn more about in the future. But before we sign off, I'd just like to give you a quick summary of what we talked about today. So hopefully what I've shown you is that FCS Express has an intuitive Microsoft Office-like interface, which makes it very easy and very intuitive for people to learn and pick up rather naturally. We're not only a sophisticated data analysis software, but we're also a sophisticated data reporting software. So all those bar plots and titration curves and things, those are all built into the software. So you can do a lot, if not most of your work, right here in FCS Express. And that really saves you a lot of time. And our batch actions make it very easy to quickly analyze and summarize the results of complex experiments. Okay, and then those batch actions can be basically executed with one click. And so it really streamlines your workflow, I think. And I'd like to show you where you can download a free demo of our software. So this is our website. I'll just maximize this. If you come down here to the bottom where it says Downloads, this is where you would download the free FCS Express Reader that I described for publishing. But this link here is the demo version, and that'll take you to a download page for a free 30-day fully functional evaluation version of our software. Okay, so we encourage you to try it out and let us know how it goes for you. We also have other resources available for you, so we like to say help is never more than a click or two away. If you come up to the Applications button, just come over here to help. We have tutorials that are organized in different subjects, so if you need more help about gating or you need more help about making bar plots, there's a tutorial just for you here. And we also have a manual for more technical questions. And if you go back to our website, we have an online forum where users are discussing different things about FCS Express. And we also pride ourselves on having very responsive customer support. So if you email us at this address, support@denovosoftware.com, we'll be happy to get back to you with any questions you might have. And frequently we can get back to you the same day, sometimes within a few hours, but typically it's within a day or two. So, and we love to hear from customers, so please don't hesitate to write us in if you have any questions about today's webinar or any questions that arise after you download the demo. Okay, and before we close out, it looks like we've ended a tiny bit early here. I just want to say if there's any questions, now's a good time to ask them as well. Does anyone have a question? Okay, well, in that case, I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon or morning, as the case may be, and thanks for spending this hour with us here at Novo Software.